So, have you ever really thought about where genius actually comes from? It's not some lightning strike out of the blue. Nah, it's more like a creative family tree. It's this wild mix of influences, total failures, and a little bit of rebellion. And today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to map out the tree for the mathematician and commentator Eric Weinstein. And in the process, we'll give you a blueprint to figure out your own journey of ideas.
Okay, so what even is this genealogy of ideas? Well, think of it like a map of your creative DNA. It's this idea, inspired by Austin Kleon, that instead of just looking at someone's success and being like, wow, you dig deeper. You study their influences, their mentors, and this is the really important part, their failures. It's all about deconstructing their whole journey to find a kind of blueprint for yourself.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to follow the life cycle of this idea tree. First up, we'll look at the trunk. That's Weinstein's core identity. Then we'll dig into the roots, his influences. After that, we'll brave the storms of his failures, see how he finally reached the sunlight of success, and then, the best part, we'll show you how to build your own tree from scratch.
So every great idea tree has to start with a solid trunk, right? It's that core, non-negotiable identity. And for Eric Weinstein, man, that trunk is being the perpetual outsider. It's this deep, unwavering criticism of the systems we all take for granted. And you got to understand, this isn't just a small part of his story. It is his story.
And what's so fascinating is just how consistent he is with this. I mean, at his core, Weinstein is convinced that formal institutions, we're talking universities, scientific bodies, you name it, they actually suppress the really groundbreaking ideas they're supposed to be nurturing. So who does he champion? The self-taught thinkers, the people who work in the gaps between disciplines, because he's convinced that's where the real magic happens.
And look, this isn't just some casual complaint he has. No, it's a deep-seated philosophy. He's repeatedly said that this worship of degree and position is one of the biggest things holding back real progress. And that conviction, it basically forced his hand. It made him carve out his own, totally unconventional path, finding success way, way outside the halls of traditional academia.
All right, so if that's the trunk, let's dig down into the roots. Let's see what actually nourished this identity. We're talking about the influences, cultural, intellectual, even familial, that fed that rebellious, outsider spirit right from the get-go and gave it the strength to really take hold. And this is where things get really interesting, because it's such a unique blend of stuff. Culturally, he points to comedians, people like Mel Brooks. Intellectually, he's looking at absolute iconoclasts like David Bowie and Madonna, artists who, as he puts it, habituated their audience for change. And then there's his family, where he grew up in this dynamic where interrupting each other during a debate wasn't seen as rude, it was just a sign that you were really engaged. And it's that wild combination, right there, that really anchors his whole way of seeing the world.
But, no tree gets strong without getting battered by a few storms, right? And it's the same for any creative person. The failures, the rejections, the tough criticism, they're not just bumps in the road. They're the moments that define you. They can either break you, or they can force you to grow tougher and way more resilient.
So what was one of Weinstein's first major storms? Well, it was his PhD experience at Harvard. And this was so much more than just a tough time with his studies. It basically became this defining battle against the exact institutional structure he was already suspicious of. Honestly, it pretty much set the stage for a whole lifetime of conflict and fierce independence. And you can really feel the weight of it in his own words. He described it as being in a very low-trust situation. Think about that. This wasn't just, a disagreement with a professor over a paper. This was a fundamental feeling of alienation from the entire community he was supposed to be joining. And that struggle, it would fuel his public criticism for years and years to come. So here's the kicker. The groundbreaking math he proposed for his thesis, it got rejected. But then, just a few years later, those exact same ideas are discovered by other people, and they totally revolutionize physics. They become known as the Seiberg-Witten equations. Can you imagine? For Weinstein, he said it felt like being rolled in an alley, just a massive professional and, you have to assume, personal blow. And believe me, the storms did not stop there. He's caught criticism from pretty much all sides. On one hand, you've got mainstream outlets like the Wall Street Journal, which described his and his peers' work as a kind of conspiracy-driven physics. And then on the other hand, you have people within the science community, like the YouTuber Professor Dave Explains, who straight up called him a fraud. It's really key to see how all this constant pushback just hardened that outsider identity even more. But here's the thing about a tree that weathers a storm. It grows stronger. And that's exactly what happened here. The tree didn't just survive, it absolutely thrived. Instead of running from his outsider status, Weinstein leaned right into it. And by doing that, he found his own patch of sunlight. He built a platform and reached an audience that those traditional institutions could never, ever have given him. I mean, this is literally how he turned his biggest weakness into his greatest strength. He teamed up with another renegade, the investor Peter Thiel. He completely bypassed the academic gatekeepers by going on massive platforms like the Joe Rogan Experience. He built his own ecosystem with his podcast, The Portal. And in doing all of that, he became a central figure in what became known as the intellectual dark web. The takeaway is huge. He didn't break into the institution, he just went and built his own.
Okay, so why have we walked through all of this? What's in it for you? It's simple, really. This whole case study is a template. Once you understand the trunk, the roots, the storms, and the sunlight in someone else's story, you've suddenly got this incredibly powerful framework to look at and build your own. All right, let's do this. It's your turn. Step 1, define your trunk. What is that core, non-negotiable belief you have? Step 2, map your roots. Who are the people, what are the books, the experiences that really made you who you are? Step 3, and this one's tough, acknowledge your storms. What were the failures and criticisms that shaped you the most? And finally, number 4, connect all of that to your sunlight. How did getting through those tough times lead to your biggest successes?
When you go through this process, what you're really doing is uncovering your unique creative DNA. So I want to leave you with a question to get the wheels turning. Who is the most unexpected ancestor on your idea tree? Seriously, think about it. Is it a musician? A scientist? Maybe a comedian? Drop your answer in the comments below, because that one surprising influence, well, it might just be the key that unlocks your next big idea.